Miss, don't stay after midnight. That's what the old woman told me the very first evening, her fingers on the brass chain like it was the only thing holding the night back. She said it soft, Tennessee soft, but her eyes ticked to the door as if time had a key. I smiled, told her I'd be fine, told her I'd worked nights before, but inside I felt that tiny pull you get before a storm, when the air changes and your skin knows something you can't name yet. The hallway smelled like lemon oil and old hymnals. The porch light threw a pale circle onto the rug. The maple outside scraped the siding in a whisper that sounded like memory. She kept glancing at the deadbolt, then at the plate she'd set for no one at the table. "Please," she said again, "don't stay after midnight." And I heard the kind of fear that isn't about monsters. It's about people you love who learn to take more than you can afford to give. My name is Margaret Rose Bennett, but folks call me Maggie. I'm 66, a widow since last spring, 2 grandbabies who think I hung the moon, and a lifetime of regular work, school cafeteria, church nursery, years of washing other people's dishes and minds and worries. For a decade now, I've been a home health aide, the sort who carries a blood pressure cuff in a tote and a prayer in her pocket. The lady in the lamplight was Mrs. Adeline Porter, 84, hair set on Fridays, voice like a choir alto worn smooth by decades. This little white house on Birch Street was hers before anyone else decided to claim it. The carpets were thin where feet had loved them, the mantel held 3 Bible school crafts and a folded flag, and the air had that baked-in quiet of homes where the television never shouts. She moved slow but sure, kept her kitchen neat enough to host the mayor, and apologized when her hands shook even a little. I liked her immediately, which is dangerous work in my line of work, because liking someone makes you want to protect the parts of them they're trying to excuse. Before we go on, do me a kindness and tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I want to know where this story lands, whose kitchens and porches and coffee cups are keeping us company tonight. You just listen to me now, sweetheart, because I'm going to tell it plain. There's nothing haunted here except the way love turns to entitlement if you feed it wrong. Adeline had a rhythm, and I learned it in a day. Supper on the small plate, even if she only chased peas and a bite of chicken. Jeopardy at 7 with the sound low. Pills in a divided box, carefully, with a tiny nod after each swallow. Bath on Tuesdays and Saturdays. House dark by 10 except a lamp in the hall like a lighthouse for old bones. I noticed 3 things I didn't ask about that first night. Every hallway mirror wore a little triangle of crocheted lace after sundown. The deadbolt and the chain were checked twice with a whispered "good." And there was always an extra place set at the kitchen table. Plate, fork, folded napkin. And it waited with the patience only plates and old women have. At 11:50, she started watching the door instead of the clock. At 11:58, the maple stopped whispering. And at exactly 12:03, we heard it. A car door, one slow step in the gravel, a key ring tapping the siding like a metronome. "Go on home, Maggie," she said quietly, and I realized the rule wasn't about me at all. It was about him. "Does he hurt you?" I asked. "Straight, because straight is kind when it matters." "He doesn't leave bruises," she said. "He just takes. And afterward he tells me I'm lucky he's around." She pressed her palms together like she was warming them at a small fire no one else could see. "Sometimes that's worse." The knob turned. The deadbolt held. The chain trembled between the door and the frame like a violin string. A man's voice came through that narrow seam, low and practiced. "Ma, unlock it." "No, please. No, it's late." Just the sound of a person who's been told yes so many times he can't hear any other word. "Not tonight, Randall," she answered. And the way she said his name, last syllable clipped, told me that once upon a time that boy had been somebody's whole hope. "I've got company." "Who?" he snapped. "You don't need company." Then, to the chain. "Unlock the door." I stepped where he could see the edge of my face in the porch light. "Evening," I said. "I'm her aide. She's turned in. You can come by in the morning and we'll have coffee." Silence, then a laugh that didn't like being laughed with. "You don't tell me when I see my mother," he said. "I pay for half this house." Behind me, Adeline flinched, not in fear, but in the fatigue of someone who's had to correct the same lie for years. "This house is mine," she said, steady as church. Your father put it in writing. Papers come and go, he said. And the chain gave a little sigh, metal against metal, followed by retreating steps, a car starting, and the sound of a man who believed leaving now was just a way to come back bigger later. We stood very still until the quiet got honest again. Then we made tea, because good women make tea when the ground tilts. She held her mug like a handhold. He used to knock at dinner, then after 9, then later. I told him midnight was the line. You come after midnight, I won't open. He thinks everything I say is a dare. What does he take? Anything that turns into money fast. The silver from my sister, he said I gave it to him for gutters. Cash from the coffee tin. Borrowing, he calls it. Once, papers. He swapped my will for another and said it was simpler. He tells me I get confused. She looked at me with eyes that had memorized more hymns than lies. I do sometimes forget where I put the nutmeg. I don't forget who I raised. I could have clocked out at 12:15. Instead, I walked the perimeter of her small kingdom and made small repairs. Back door latched, chain tested, blinds tilted so the room still felt like a room. I wrote my number large and stuck it to the fridge. You call me, I said, before you call anyone else. She nodded. I kissed her hair the way I kiss my grandson when he's pretending he isn't scared. On my way out, I noticed a hat box on the top shelf of her closet, the old-fashioned kind with a satin ribbon. She followed my look. That's where the will I trust is, she said. Don't scold me about a safe, Maggie. This house is my safe. Well, I'll be darned if that didn't land like a vow. The next morning, I spent 40 minutes at the county building because I've learned that paper tells the truth people won't. The clerk pulled files with the disinterest of a man who's seen 50 versions of the same sad. Randall Porter had started 3 businesses in 5 years and shut 3 down. 1 bankruptcy, 1 judgment still chewing on his heels, 1 line showing a title company visit 2 weeks back that made my stomach tighten like a fist. Lots of ink, not much honor. When I came by for the day shift, Adeline was in the sunroom with her Bible open to Psalm 27, but her eyes far off. Mornin', sweetheart, she said, voice sugar but not quite sweet. You didn't have to come early. I wanted to, I said. We washed curtains and sorted mail, 2 women doing repairs with suds and scents. I climbed a chair and pulled down the hat box. Inside were white gloves thin as breath, a photo of a red bicycle, a dried corsage the color of tea, and a will signed 3 summers ago, witnessed by Mrs. Green next door and the pastor. It left the house to a church scholarship fund and the rest to 3 grandkids who still called to talk about things that weren't money. Randall's name wasn't on it. My breath left me in a soft whistle I didn't mean to make. He knows, she said gently. That's why he comes. He thinks if he empties the house a handful at a time, there won't be anything left to leave. At 4 o'clock, the front door rattled. Daylight boldness this time. I'd just taken out the trash, chain off for 2 minutes too long, and Randall walked in like a man crossing his yard. Tall, handsome in the way a certain kind of trouble is handsome, hair too black to be honest, smile built for Sundays. Ma, he sang. There she is, my favorite girl. He finally looked at me. You must be the helper. He didn't offer a hand. Men who assume don't need to. Aid, I said. Maggie. He gave Adeline a kiss that landed like a stamp. How's my house? He asked lightly, and the way he said it told me he'd practiced it in a mirror until it sounded like a joke. It's mine, she replied, and I wanted to clap. He chuckled, eyes moving across the room like a shopping list. I'm just going to grab a few of Dad's old files, he said, and stepped toward the office. Paperwork stays, I said, my voice the tone you use with a burner you know is hot. If you need copies, your mother's attorney can arrange that. He stopped, recalibrated the charm. And who might that be? Mr. Holcomb, Adeline said, quick as a match strike. Not true. The will named a woman in Knoxville who volunteered through a church network, but a bluff can be a bridge if you step sure. Randall's smile cooled. Don't make this hard, Ma, he murmured. Then don't come after midnight, she returned, and his jaw did a small, mean tick. We'll talk later, he said, and left, door not quite closing, which somehow felt worse than a slam. That night I set the chain at 10. I took the extra plate off the table and put a jar of zinnias there, little suns refusing to set. Adeline watched me, shoulders loosening like a held breath. "You're stubborn," she said. "Bless your heart. Back in my day," I told her, "stubborn was a virtue if you aimed it right." We smiled, tired and a little braver. My phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number, single text. "Check the desk's top drawer. Don't wait." I opened the drawer. Taped under the lip with blue painter's tape was a small thumb drive, and beneath it a folded photo. Randall stepping out of a title company with a woman who wasn't his wife. On the back, neat block letters, Monday, 12:03 a.m., copies keys. The stove clock slid from 11:59 to 12 ha. In the quiet between ticks, a key eased into Adeline's front door and turned, slow, like a man who believes the dark is his alibi. The chain lifted against its screws with a faint, warning cry. I put the thumb drive in my pocket, squared my shoulders, and reached for the porch light switch, ready to see exactly who thought he owned what came after midnight. The sound of that key turning in the lock froze the air itself. I felt Adeline's breath catch behind me, that small, shallow gasp only mothers make when they recognize the footsteps of the child who stopped being gentle. The chain trembled once, twice, then gave a metallic cry before snapping loose from the old screws that had held it in place for decades. The door opened halfway. The porch light caught his face, and Randall stepped inside like he'd just come home from a long day instead of breaking into his mother's house. "Ma," he said calmly, brushing dust from his sleeve, "why do you have this woman here in the middle of the night?" He didn't look at me. Not yet. He looked around the living room, slow and sure, like a man checking inventory. Adeline's voice was small but steady. "You weren't invited." He smiled, that kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "I don't need an invitation. This is still family property." "No," I said, stepping between them. "It's her home." That got his attention. He turned, looked me over the way a man looks at a bug he's deciding whether to swat. "You think you're some kind of hero, lady? This is none of your business." "Well," I said, calm but firm, "I make it my business when someone forces a door open at midnight." Behind me, I could feel Adeline trembling. Randall's gaze darted toward the hat box on the table. I'd been careless earlier, left it there after checking the will. His eyes narrowed. "She's been showing you things, hasn't she?" Adeline pressed her hands together. "Only what's mine." That's when he lost his fake calm. "You don't even remember what's yours," he shouted. "You'd forget your own name if people stopped reminding you." I saw her flinch, but something inside her hardened too. "I remember who raised you," she said quietly. He froze, jaw tight. For a moment, I saw something like shame cross his face, but it passed quick, like a shadow under a door. He turned and walked toward the office. I moved to block the doorway. "You're not taking anything else tonight." Randall's voice went cold. "Lady, move." "Or what?" I asked, meeting his eyes. "You'll take something from me, too?" We stared each other down for a long 10 seconds, the kind of silence that could break or heal, depending on who blinked first. He blinked. He backed up a step and gave a humorless laugh. "You two think you're clever. I'll be back. And next time, I'll have the papers to prove it." He slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. The sound echoed through the house long after his car pulled away. Adeline sank onto the couch, face pale but eyes fierce. "He's not going to stop, Maggie." I sat beside her. "No, but now we know what he's after." I pulled the thumb drive from my pocket. "And maybe this is the proof we need." She frowned. "Proof? Whoever sent this knew what he's been up to. It's got his name, a date, a place, maybe even more." She touched my arm. "You shouldn't get involved." I smiled. "It's too late for that, sweetheart." The next morning, I drove into town with that thumb drive in my purse. The sky was gray and heavy, like even the weather wanted to stay quiet. Willow Creek's main street still looked like the 1970s refused to leave. Barber pole spinning slow, diner coffee strong enough to melt a spoon, courthouse clock stuck at 10:42 for years. I parked outside Brooks & Associates, the only law office that didn't smell of dust and regret. Inside, a woman about my age looked up from her desk. "Can I help you?" I handed her the folded note that had come with the photo. I was told to ask for Attorney Brooks. She raised an eyebrow. Angela Brooks. That's me. I told her everything. The midnight visits, the will, the photo, the text, the thumb drive. She listened without interrupting, only nodding once in a while. When I finished, she plugged the drive into her computer. What came up made her sit back slowly. "Where did you get this?" she asked. It was taped under Adeline Porter's desk. On the screen were scanned documents, deeds, signature comparisons, a transfer agreement dated just 2 weeks earlier, showing Adeline's property sold to Randall Porter for a single dollar. But the signature wasn't hers. Angela whistled low. He forged it. And whoever sent you this must have had access to his files. Can we prove it? I asked. Oh, we can do more than that, she said, eyes sharp. We can stop him before he takes another dime. When I came back to the house that evening, Adeline was sitting by the window, hands folded on her lap like she'd been praying for hours. He called, she said softly. Said he's sorry. Said he's coming by tomorrow to make things right. I put my hand over hers. He's coming because he knows he's been caught. She looked at me, eyes full of both love and heartbreak. He's still my son, Maggie. I know, I said. And that's the hardest part. She nodded, tears balancing at the edge, but not falling. Do you think he ever loved me? I keep wondering if I spoiled him, or if life just taught him wrong. Maybe both, I said gently. But love doesn't mean letting someone keep taking. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the slow tick of the wall clock, two women caught between forgiveness and justice. Then she whispered, Promise me one thing, Maggie. When he comes tomorrow, don't let me lose my nerve. I squeezed her hand. You won't, because this time, you won't be standing alone. Outside, the maple swayed in the wind, scattering yellow leaves like small paper promises, the kind you hope will land where they're meant to. And as the clock ticked past 11, we both knew that the next visit wouldn't be about words anymore. It would be about truth, paper, and finally, consequences. By the time the morning light crept through Adeline's lace curtains, she was already dressed and sitting in her favorite armchair, the blue one by the window. Her Bible rested open on her lap, but she wasn't reading. She was waiting. The coffee pot gurgled in the kitchen, filling the house with that steady, comforting smell that usually meant peace. But that morning, it smelled like warning. I'd been up since dawn myself, making sure everything was ready. Angela Brooks, the lawyer, had promised to come by around 10 with the notarized papers and copies of the forgery. She said we needed Adeline's signature to authorize the investigation. Once it's official, she told me, Randall can't touch that property again without risking jail. That word, jail, still felt strange in Adeline's house, like it didn't belong anywhere near her Bible verses and family photos. She didn't want revenge. She wanted peace. But peace doesn't come cheap when it's your own child you're standing up to. Would you like some toast? I asked, trying to make the morning sound ordinary. She smiled a little. You don't fool me, Maggie. You're as nervous as I am. Maybe a bit, I admitted. But that's all right. Being brave never means you stop shaking. She chuckled softly, that sweet, worn laugh that comes from someone who's already cried enough. I'll remember that. At exactly 9:58, a car door slammed outside. The sound made both of us jump. I looked out through the curtain. Randall's black SUV glinted in the sunlight, clean as money freshly laundered. He wasn't alone. A woman stepped out from the passenger side, tall, well-dressed, maybe 30, holding a leather folder. Adeline squinted. That's not his wife. No, ma'am, I said. That's someone from his bank or lawyer's office, I'd bet. Randall didn't knock. He pushed the door open like he still had the right. Morning, Ma, he said cheerfully, that false warmth dripping off every word. I brought someone to help us straighten things out. Adeline stayed seated, calm and small, but steady. I already have someone helping me, she said. Her name's Angela Brooks. Randall's smile faltered. You what? Before he could say more, a silver sedan pulled into the drive. Angela stepped out, wearing a dark blazer and a look that said, Don't waste my time. She walked right past Randall as if he were part of the scenery. Mrs. Porter, she said kindly, I brought the documents we discussed. Are you ready to sign? Adeline nodded. Yes, dear, Let's do it at the table." Randall laughed, that kind of laugh that sounds harmless if you don't know better. "You've been busy, Ma. Getting lawyers, signing things. You really think this lady's gonna save you?" Angela looked up from her briefcase. "Actually, I'm here to save you from a felony, Mr. Porter. Forging legal documents carries up to 10 years. That shut him up. His face turned the color of an undercooked steak. "What are you talking about?" I took a folded paper from my bag and placed it on the table. "This," I said. "The deed transfer you filed, the one with your mother's signature. Only problem is, the signature isn't hers." Angela slid the proof toward him. Side by side, the two signatures told their own story. One neat and fluid, one shaky and wrong. "We had a handwriting analyst confirm it," she said, "and we know exactly which title company processed the fake sale. They've already sent us the security footage." Randall blinked hard, anger flickering behind his eyes. "You can't prove anything." "Oh, we can," Angela said. "And we will. I've already filed a temporary injunction on the property. From now on, every attempt to claim it goes through me." Adeline didn't say a word. She just reached for a pen and signed the new affidavit with a steady hand. Watching her, I felt something shift in the room, the way dignity fills a space when fear finally steps aside. Randall's companion tugged at his sleeve. "We should go," she whispered, clearly wanting no part in the storm that was coming. But he didn't move. His pride wouldn't let him. He looked at me, then back at his mother. "You think this changes anything? You'll still need me when something breaks. When the bills come." Adeline stood. She was small, but she carried herself like she just remembered who she used to be. "I needed you to love me," she said softly, "not to own me." For a long moment, no one spoke. Even Randall seemed unsure what to do with words like that. Finally, he picked up his coat. "Fine," he said, "but don't call me when you fall down those stairs." She didn't answer. Angela stepped aside as he brushed past. The woman who'd come with him hurried out too, heels clicking like gilt on tile. The door closed. The silence that followed felt heavy, but not empty. It was the sound of something ending, and maybe something beginning too. Adeline sank back into her chair, hands trembling now that it was done. "He looked just like his father when he left," she whispered. "Same walk, same temper, but his father never would have done what he did." I sat beside her, laid my hand on hers. "You did the right thing." She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Then why does it still hurt so much?" "Because doing right always costs something," I said. "You just paid in love." Outside, Randall's engine roared to life, tires scattering gravel like words left unsaid. I watched him drive off, wondering if he'd ever understand what he'd thrown away. Angela gathered her files and gave me a small nod. "It's going to be okay now," she said. "Legally, at least. But keep an eye out. He's not the kind to quit quietly." "I will," I promised. When she left, Adeline was staring out the window, her reflection faint in the glass. "He'll come back," she murmured. "But next time, he won't find what he's looking for." And as the light shifted across the living room, I realized she wasn't just talking about her house anymore. She was talking about herself. For the first time in weeks, the house felt still. The kind of quiet that comes after a long storm. Not peace yet, but the start of it. Adeline slept late that morning, worn out from all that had happened. I made coffee, swept the porch, and tried to tell myself it was over. But part of me knew better. Randall didn't strike me as the kind of man who could walk away from a no and let it stand. By mid-afternoon, Adeline was sitting in the kitchen, combing her silver hair, her eyes softer than I'd seen in days. "You think he'll come back?" she asked, though we both knew the answer. "He'll try," I said. "But next time, he won't get through that door." She gave a tired smile. "You sound like my late husband. Always fixing, always guarding." "Guess I learned from the same kind of man," I said. We spent that afternoon packing the papers Angela had left into a small, fireproof box. I labeled everything: deed, will, affidavit, photos, receipts. It was the kind of work that gives you back a little control. Adeline insisted on keeping the key herself. "I've spent too many years giving men keys to my house," she said. "This one's mine." I admired her strength, but there was something behind her eyes that still hurt. She'd lost more than documents. She'd lost the dream that a son always comes home for love, not ownership. Around 5, the phone rang. Adeline picked it up before I could reach it. "Hello?" Her voice was cautious. A pause. Then she turned pale. Yes, I understand." When she hung up, her hand shook. "That was Randall's wife," she said quietly. She didn't sound angry, just tired. "What did she say?" "She said he packed a bag and left town this morning, told her he'd handle things his way. She thought I should know." We sat there for a long minute, letting that settle. I could hear the tick of the kitchen clock and the faint hum of the refrigerator. "Handle things his way," I repeated. "That doesn't sound good." "No," Adeline said softly. "It sounds like my son." That night, I stayed over. I told her it was precaution, but truth is, I didn't want her to wake up alone if he showed up again. I made up a cot in the living room, close to the front door. She smiled when I did. "You remind me of Ruth Miller from church," she said. "She never took nonsense from anyone either." I'll take that as a compliment. Before bed, I checked every lock twice, closed the blinds, and made sure the porch light was on. Outside, the wind picked up, and the maple tree rustled like it was whispering secrets. Around midnight, I was half asleep when I heard it. A soft knock at the door. Not loud, not angry, just deliberate. 3 times. I got up quietly, my heart steady, but alert. "Mrs. Porter," I called softly. "Stay in your room." The knock came again. "Randall?" I said. No answer. I peered through the curtain. A shadow stood near the porch rail, head down. Then a car's headlights swept across the yard, and I saw him clearly. Randall, shoulders slumped, eyes red. He wasn't drunk this time. He just looked defeated. I unlocked the door halfway and stepped onto the porch. "You shouldn't be here," I said. "I know." His voice was rough, stripped of its arrogance. "I just wanted to see her, one last time. She doesn't need more pain." "I'm not here to take anything," he said quickly. "I messed up. The lawyer called. Said she could press charges. Said I could go to prison. He stopped, rubbing his forehead. "I just want to tell her I'm sorry." I studied him for a long second. Maybe I should have slammed the door. Maybe I should have called Angela or the sheriff. But in his voice, I heard something real. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the ache of someone who finally realized what they'd broken. "All right," I said. "You wait here. I'll ask if she wants to see you." Inside, Adeline was sitting up, already awake, robe wrapped tight. "He's here, isn't he?" she asked. I nodded. "He says he wants to apologize." She looked at me for a long time. Then she nodded slowly. "Let him in, but leave the door open." Randall stepped into the living room, like a man walking into church. Quiet, reverent, maybe afraid. He took off his hat, looked around the house like he was seeing it for the first time. "Ma," he said softly, "I'm sorry." She didn't answer right away. She just studied him, that old mix of love and disappointment on her face. Finally, she said, "You took things I can replace, but you also took my trust. That'll take time." He swallowed hard. "I know." "Do you?" she asked. "Because trust isn't something you get back just by saying sorry. You earn it, piece by piece, like building a house." Randall nodded. "Then I'll try." For a moment, they stood there in the kind of silence that only family can make, heavy but human. Then Adeline said, "You should go now. Start where you can still do some good, maybe with your wife." He nodded again, eyes wet, then turned and left without another word. When the door closed, Adeline leaned against it and exhaled, long and trembling. "I never thought he'd come back like that," she whispered. "Maybe he finally saw what he was losing," I said. She nodded, looking out the window at his taillights fading into the dark. Or maybe he saw what he can't take anymore. Either way, the night didn't feel dangerous anymore. Just sad but clean, like something had been washed away that needed to go. And as the clock ticked past midnight, I realized the rule she'd made all those years ago wasn't about fear at all. It was about boundaries. She'd drawn her line at midnight. And finally, she'd kept it. The next morning, sunlight poured through the kitchen window like forgiveness trying to find its way in. Adeline was already awake, stirring oatmeal in her old copper pot, humming a hymn that didn't have words anymore, just soft notes of habit and peace. I sat across from her, coffee in hand, watching the steam curl between us like a truce. "He looked tired," she said finally, voice calm but far away. "Randall?" I asked. She nodded, like a boy who ran too long and finally stopped. She stirred another slow circle. "I don't know if he meant what he said, but for the first time, I think I believed he was sorry." I didn't argue. You don't tell a mother how to read her own child's face. Still, I couldn't stop thinking of how Randall had stood there last night. Eyes red, shoulders drooped, like a man realizing too late that love doesn't bend to signatures or power. "He'll need time," I said, "and you'll need space." Adeline smiled faintly. "Space I have plenty of. Time, though." She let out a soft laugh. "That one's up to the good Lord now." Angela came by that afternoon with a folder under her arm, and the kind of brisk energy that means good news. "Well, ladies," she said, setting the folder on the table. "The injunction's been approved. Randall can't access the property, accounts, or any assets connected to your name. It's all locked until the court date." Adeline gave a long, quiet nod. "I don't like the sound of that word, court. But I like the sound of safe." Angela smiled. "That's exactly what this is." I poured her coffee, and the three of us sat there, like women do when something hard has been survived. Angela went through every paper line by line, dates, seals, signatures, all the proof that justice had a shape. When she finished, Adeline asked, "What happens if he doesn't show up to court?" "Then it's decided without him," Angela said, "and it stays yours for good." For a moment, Adeline didn't say anything. She looked out the window toward the maple tree that had started shedding its yellow leaves and whispered, "For good. That's a heavy kind of peace." That evening, I helped her make supper. Cornbread, fried okra, and beans simmered slow in a cast-iron pot. The house smelled like home again, not like fear. She insisted I sit while she served me a plate. "You've done enough, Maggie. A woman can't thank another woman properly with just words." I smiled. "Then I'll accept it in okra." We ate in the same kitchen where so many arguments had begun. The silence now wasn't tense. It was healing. Between bites, Adeline told me stories about her husband, Earl. How he'd bought this house the same year their first baby was born. How Randall used to run barefoot through that same hallway, dragging a toy truck that scratched every baseboard she still refused to repaint. "You know," she said, "when Randall was little, he used to bring me dandelions from the yard. Thought they were flowers." She laughed softly. "I'd put them in a cup by the sink. Every night, he'd check if they were still there. I kept them until they turned to fluff." "That kind of love doesn't die easy," I said. "No," she whispered, "but it can get lost." Around 7, there was another knock at the door, but this time it wasn't Randall. It was Ruth Miller, Adeline's oldest friend from church. She came in with a casserole in her hands and worry in her eyes. "Heard the news," Ruth said. "Half the congregation's talking. Some say you're brave. Some say you should have just let it be." Adeline chuckled. "Half the town's been saying what I should do since 1958. They're just consistent." Ruth laughed too, then looked at me. "You must be Maggie. We've been praying for you both. The Lord sends the right people at the right time, doesn't he?" "I sure hope so," I said. They sat and talked while I cleaned up the dishes. I could hear bits of their conversation. Old names, old hymns, shared memories stitched together with that soft southern rhythm only lifelong friends have. At one point, Ruth took Adeline's hand and said, "You did what most women never do. You told your son no and meant it." Adeline nodded, eyes shining. "Took me 84 years to learn that no can be holy." Later that night, after Ruth left and the kitchen lights dimmed, Adeline and I stood by the front door. The air was cool, filled with crickets and the smell of rain somewhere close. She looked up at the maple tree swaying gently above us. "You know," she said, "I used to hate that tree. Always dropping leaves, always making a mess. But Earl planted it the year we bought this house. Said one day it'd shade the whole porch. He was right. Took time, but it grew." "Everything worth keeping takes time," I said. She smiled at that, then reached out and slid the new chain lock I'd installed earlier. It clicked firmly into place. "You hear that?" she said. "That's the sound of a line that stays." I nodded. "And it's yours." For the first time since I'd met her, Adeline looked younger than her years, lighter, freer. "I think I'll sleep well tonight," she said. "You should," I told her. "You've earned it." I turned off the porch light, and the house settled into silence. The kind that's not empty but full, of peace, of memories, of lessons finally learned. And as I lay down on the cot in the living room, I realized something simple and true. Sometimes justice doesn't look like punishment. Sometimes it's just an old woman locking her door and knowing she finally owns her nights again. The peace we'd found didn't last long. In small towns like Willow Creek, news travels faster than reason, and forgiveness moves slower than gossip. Within a week, everyone at the diner, the post office, and even the gas station had their own version of what happened at Adeline's house. Some said Randall had tried to steal everything she owned. Others said she'd gone senile and thrown her only son to the wolves. I could see it starting to wear on her. When we went to church that Sunday, whispers followed us down the aisle like a draft of cold air. Adeline held her head high, pretending not to notice, but her hands shook when she opened her hymn book. After service, a woman from the choir approached her, the kind who'd never missed a chance to sound kind while cutting deep. "We've been praying for you, Adeline," she said, resting her manicured hand on Adeline's arm. "Family troubles are so public sometimes." Adeline smiled politely. "That's why the Lord gave us grace, to keep it private in our hearts." I almost laughed at how quickly the woman's face tightened. That was Adeline for you, soft-spoken, but sharp enough to slice pride in half. When we got home, she sighed as she set her purse down. "It's strange, Maggie," she said. "You can live in a town your whole life, serve pie at every fundraiser, teach Sunday school, and the moment your son sins, it becomes your confession." I nodded. People forget it's possible to love someone and still not let them ruin you. She gave me that knowing smile again. That's a sermon right there. The next few days felt lighter. We went through old boxes in the attic, sorting memories from clutter. Adeline found her husband's fishing hat, still carrying the smell of lake water and sunshine. "He'd wear this thing till it nearly disintegrated," she said, laughing softly. "He used to say the fish wouldn't bite unless he looked ridiculous." It was good to see her laugh again. But even laughter couldn't stop the small unease that hung in the corners of the house, a shadow that didn't belong to the maple tree outside. That shadow took shape on Thursday afternoon. I was folding laundry in the kitchen when the phone rang. Adeline picked it up, cheerful as always. "Hello, this is Adeline Porter." Her tone shifted almost immediately. "Randall?" I froze. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Son, I told you not to call here." Another pause. Her eyes filled with something between love and fear. "I don't want to talk about the house anymore. It's over." She hung up slowly, then looked at me. "He says he's in town." My stomach tightened. "Did he say why?" "No," she said. "Only that he wanted to clear his name." "That's not a good sign." "No," she agreed, pressing a hand to her chest. "It isn't." That evening, I went to the diner for takeout. People stopped talking when I walked in. I pretended not to notice and kept my eyes on the pie display. When I paid, the cashier leaned close. "You tell Miss Adeline to be careful," she whispered. "Randall was here this morning, sat at the counter an hour, talking about how his mama's lawyer set him up." I drove back fast, the weight of that warning sitting heavy in my chest. When I pulled up to the house, Adeline was on the porch, a cardigan wrapped tight around her shoulders, staring out toward the road. "He came by," she said before I could even ask. "Didn't get out of the car. Just sat there staring." "Do you want me to call Deputy Collins?" I asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. "Not yet. He looked lost, like a man who doesn't know where to go next." "Lost can turn dangerous," I said quietly. She sighed. "You think he'd hurt me?" "I think hurt people sometimes forget who they're hurting." For a while, neither of us spoke. The sun slipped lower, turning the sky orange and pink, the kind of beauty that almost feels cruel when you're scared. Finally, Adeline whispered, "I just want it to be over, Maggie. I don't want to fight my own son anymore." "You're not fighting him," I said. "You're fighting for yourself." The next morning there was an envelope on the porch. No postage. Just her name written in Randall's handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I can't let you ruin me. You'll understand soon. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Adeline read it once, folded it neatly, and handed it to me. He's angry again, she said simply. I called Angela right away. She told me to keep the letter and to document everything. If he shows up again, she said firmly, you call the police. Don't wait this time. That afternoon, Deputy Collins stopped by. He was a kind man, one of those small-town officers who still knew how to talk to people instead of scare them. He read the note, frowned, and said, "We'll keep an eye on things. I'll drive by at night, make sure everything's quiet." Adeline thanked him, her voice steady, but her fingers trembling around her teacup. "He's still my son," she said softly. Collins nodded. "And you're still his mother. But that doesn't give him the right to scare you." After he left, I sat beside her on the couch. "You're safe now," I said. She smiled faintly. "I know, but safety feels lonely sometimes." I didn't have an answer for that, because she was right. When your heart draws a line against someone you love, even safety can ache. That night, I checked every lock again before turning out the lights. The house was quiet, but my nerves weren't. I stood by the window for a long while, watching the maple sway under the moonlight. Then, somewhere in the distance, a car engine started, faint, steady, familiar. I didn't wake Adeline, but I stayed there until the sound faded, telling myself it was just someone passing through. Still, as I pulled the curtain closed, I couldn't shake the feeling that Randall wasn't done drawing his own lines yet. The next morning started like any other, but the air inside the house felt heavier, the way it does right before a storm. Adeline was sitting at the table, her cup of tea untouched. The letter Randall had left on the porch lay folded beside it. She'd read it so many times that the creases had begun to tear. "I dreamed of him," she said softly. "He was little again, barefoot, laughing in the yard. I woke up hearing that same laugh, but when I opened my eyes, I remembered the man he's become." I sat across from her, trying to find words that could make sense of a heartbreak like that. "Dreams don't lie, but they don't tell the whole truth either," I said gently. "He's still that boy somewhere in there, Adeline. You just can't reach him right now." She nodded, but her gaze stayed distant. "I used to think a mother's love could reach anywhere," she whispered. "But now I know, some places are locked from the inside." Before I could answer, the phone rang again. I moved fast, but she was quicker. "Hello?" she said. Her voice dropped. "Randall, please, stop calling." She listened for a moment, then her hand went cold around the receiver. "You what?" she said, trembling. "You filed a claim?" My stomach twisted. "What claim?" She covered the receiver and looked at me with wide, frightened eyes. "He says he filed paperwork in Nashville, something about my competency. Says I'm not of sound mind." I took the phone from her. "Randall," I said firmly, "you need to stop this. You're digging a hole you won't crawl out of." He laughed on the other end, a low, bitter sound. "You think you know what's best for her? You don't even belong in this family. My mother doesn't understand what's happening, but I do. That house isn't hers anymore." "Actually," I said, voice shaking but steady, "it still is, and if you step one foot on this property again, the police will be waiting." He hung up. The silence after was louder than the call. Adeline buried her face in her hands. "He's going to take me to court, Maggie. He's going to make me look like a fool." "No," I said. "He's going to make himself look like a man who lost everything that ever mattered." We met with Angela the next day. She already knew. "He filed for guardianship," she said, pushing a stack of papers across the desk. "He's claiming you're incapable of managing your finances." Adeline looked down, her fingers tracing the lines of text she could barely see through her tears. "He's calling me incompetent?" Angela's tone softened. "It's a common tactic in cases like this. He's trying to regain access to the property. But don't you worry. We'll fight it. The medical reports, your clear record, your testimony, it's all in your favor." Adeline sat quietly for a long time, then whispered, "He used to call me his smartest girl. Said I could fix anything. I guess that was true. Until it was him I needed to fix." When we got home, she walked straight to the maple tree. The autumn wind tugged at her scarf as she stared up at its branches. "Earl planted this," she said. "Said he wanted something that would outlive us. Guess it has." "He built it for love," I said. She nodded. "Randall's building something else, something made of anger and paper." I wanted to tell her it would all be okay, but lies never sat right in my mouth. "He can't win, Adeline, not if you stand tall." She smiled faintly. "You make it sound easy." "It isn't. But you've already done the hardest part. You said no to him. Now you just have to say yes to yourself." That night, it rained hard. The kind of rain that drowns every other sound and makes you feel small inside your own house. I couldn't sleep, so I sat in the living room, knitting just to keep my hands busy. Around midnight, headlights flashed across the window. My heart jumped. A car had pulled into the driveway. I peeked through the curtain, Randall's SUV. The engine idled for a moment, then stopped. He didn't get out, just sat there staring at the house. "Adeline," I whispered, knocking on her door. She woke instantly, as if she'd been waiting for that sound. "He's here, isn't he?" she said. "Yes, but he's not coming inside. Not this time." I dialed Deputy Collins, my voice low and steady. "He's back," I said. "Front drive." Collins arrived within 10 minutes. By then, Randall had stepped out of the car, rain soaking through his coat, face twisted with something between guilt and fury. "Mr. Porter," Collins called out, flashlight cutting through the downpour. "You need to leave." Randall looked past him, straight at the window where Adeline stood watching. "I just wanted to talk to my mother," he shouted. "She won't even hear me out." "She's heard enough," I said, stepping onto the porch despite the rain. "You've said everything you needed to say when you forged her name." He laughed, but it was broken. "You think you can replace me? You think you care about her more than I do?" "No," I said softly, "but I respect her. That's something you stopped doing a long time ago." Collins moved closer. "Sir, I'm asking you to leave. Don't make me write this up." Randall hesitated, his shoulders slumping under the rain. For a moment, I saw the boy Adeline dreamed of, the one with dandelions in his hand and sunlight on his hair. Then he turned, climbed into the car, and drove off without another word. After the taillights disappeared, Adeline exhaled a breath she'd been holding for years. "He's really gone now," she whispered. I nodded. "For tonight, he is." She looked at me with tired eyes. "Do you think he hates me?" "No," I said honestly. "I think he hates himself. You're just standing where the blame lands." She wiped her face, half smiling. "Then maybe one day he'll step out of the rain for good." I closed the door, locking it twice. "And if he does, the porch light will still be on. But the key stays with you." Outside, the rain softened into silence. Inside, the house breathed easier, 2 women standing against a storm that finally seemed ready to pass. The rain stopped by morning, but the ground stayed soft, and the air hung heavy with what had been said and what hadn't. Adeline was quiet all through breakfast, her spoon tracing circles in the oatmeal until it went cold. I didn't push her. Some silences are too sacred to interrupt. Around 9, the phone rang again, but this time it wasn't Randall. It was Angela Brooks. "I just got the update," she said. "The court denied his guardianship claim. The judge said the evidence was baseless, even scolded him for wasting the court's time." I felt a wave of relief wash through me. "Thank God," I said. "Does he know yet?" "Not officially," Angela replied. "But news like that tends to travel fast. Just stay alert for a few days, all right? He's cornered now, and people do strange things when they run out of excuses." When I hung up, Adeline was watching me, her eyes sharp again. The same eyes that once managed a house, a marriage, and a lifetime of faith. "It's over, isn't it?" she asked. "Legally, yes," I said. "But people's hearts don't end with paperwork." She smiled sadly. "No, they sure don't." We decided to get out of the house that afternoon. I drove us to the farmer's market downtown, the one she used to visit with Earl every Saturday before his stroke. The vendors still knew her by name. They smiled wide when they saw her, some out of kindness, others out of curiosity. "Mrs. Porter," called a man behind a stand of peaches. "Heard things have been rough. Glad to see you out and about." Adeline nodded politely. Thank you, Jimmy. Life's just a series of rough patches stitched together by good people, isn't it? I saw the look on Jimmy's face soften. That was her gift. Even after everything, she could turn pain into grace before it left her mouth. We walked for an hour, bought a few things, honey, tomatoes, and a small jar of blackberry jam. Adeline held the jar in her lap on the ride home, quiet, as if the weight of something so simple brought her peace. When we pulled into the driveway, though, something felt wrong. The mailbox was open, a few papers scattered near the curb. I parked, heart thumping, and stepped out to gather them. They weren't bills or flyers, they were photos of the house, taken from different angles, the porch, the backyard, even through the living room window. I looked toward Adeline. Stay in the car, I said softly, but she was already opening her door. What is it? I showed her one of the photos. Her face went pale. He's been here, she whispered. I nodded. Recently, too. Look at the light. That's from last night. We went inside, locking the door behind us. Nothing seemed disturbed, but there was an unfamiliar tension in the air, the kind that makes every creak sound personal. Adeline sat down slowly, clutching her hands together. Maybe he just wanted me to know he's watching, she said after a moment. That's not love, I told her. That's control, and we're not letting him take that from you again. I called Deputy Collins. He came within 20 minutes, collected the photos, and promised to patrol near the house more often. He's testing boundaries, Collins said. But legally, we've got enough to file a restraining order now. Adeline hesitated. He's still my son, she whispered. I don't want to destroy what little's left. I took her hand gently. He's the one destroying it, sweetheart. You're just trying to survive it. That night, the house was silent except for the crickets and the hum of the refrigerator. Adeline sat by the window again, watching the maple tree sway in the dark. You think it's wrong that I still pray for him? She asked quietly. Not at all, I said. Prayer isn't surrender. It's how we keep from turning bitter. She nodded. Then I'll keep praying. Not that he comes back, but that he finds somewhere to go that isn't here. I stayed up late again, not because I had to, but because I couldn't rest. Around midnight, I heard Adeline's soft footsteps in the hallway. She stopped by the doorway, looking at me with a small smile. I can't sleep either, she said. Earl used to say the house gets louder when you're worried. I chuckled. Mine said the same thing. We sat together for a while, not talking much. Sometimes silence between women carries more words than a sermon ever could. Then, as the clock turned past 12, we heard it, the faint crunch of gravel outside. I reached for the curtain, but Adeline touched my arm. Wait, she whispered. The headlights didn't stop this time. They slowed, then rolled past the house, fading into the distance. Just a passing car. Still, Adeline's breath shook when she exhaled. Every sound feels like him now, she said softly. That's what fear does, I told her. It teaches your ears to lie. By morning, the tension had eased again. I made pancakes, she made coffee, and for the first time in weeks, we laughed about nothing at all, about how the maple tree was dropping so many leaves she could barely see her front steps. You know, she said, I used to think growing old meant becoming weak, but I think it's the opposite. It's carrying on when you have every reason not to. That's strength, I said. She nodded, eyes glinting in the sunlight. Then I guess I'm stronger than I thought. And as she smiled, tired but whole, I realized she was right. Peace wasn't the absence of trouble. It was the courage to keep your door locked, your faith steady, and your heart open, all at once, even if the road outside still echoed with a shadow that wouldn't quite fade. 3 weeks passed without a call, a letter, or a sighting of Randall. The town, with its short memory and long tongue, had already moved on to other gossip. Adeline began to smile again in small ways, humming when she watered her plants, wearing her church brooch even on weekdays. I caught her once, dancing a little to an old Patsy Cline record while she dusted the shelves. She blushed when she saw me. Don't look at me like that, she said, laughing. The body may be old, but the rhythm's still faithful. For the first time, the house truly felt like hers again. But peace has a way of testing its keepers. It doesn't arrive and stay put. It circles the block, checking if you've earned it. And that test came quietly, one morning before dawn. I woke to the sound of tapping, soft, uncertain, like a bird at the window. I thought I was dreaming at first, but then I heard it again. 3 slow knocks at the front door. I sat up, heart drumming. The clock read 4:17 a.m. I went to Adeline's room and found her sitting upright, already awake, her robe wrapped around her like armor. "It's him," she whispered. I felt it. I motioned for her to stay put, then tiptoed to the living room. The porch light was on, and through the lace curtains, I could see a figure standing just beyond the glow. Shoulders slumped, hands in pockets, head bowed. Randall. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically. He was still tall, but hollowed out, like someone whose anger had burned itself into ash. I opened the door halfway, chain still hooked. "What are you doing here?" I asked. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "I just need to see her," he said quietly. "Please." "She's asleep," I lied. He shook his head. "She never sleeps when she's worried." Behind me I heard Adeline's voice. "He's right," she said softly. I turned. She was standing in the hallway, fragile in her pale blue robe, but calm. Too calm, like someone walking into the eye of a storm. "Let him in, Maggie," she said. "Just this once." I hesitated, but she gave me a look that didn't belong to an old woman. It was the look of a mother who had made her peace with the pain she was about to face. So I unlatched the chain. Randall stepped inside slowly, eyes darting across the living room, like he was walking through memories instead of furniture. "It hasn't changed," he murmured. Adeline smiled faintly. "The house stays the same when you stop coming to it." He looked down at his shoes. "I didn't come to fight." "Then why are you here before sunrise?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "Because I got the court letter yesterday, and I needed her to know I understand now." Adeline motioned toward the sofa. "Sit, Randall." He sat. She didn't. She stood across from him, her thin frame straight, her hands folded in front of her. "I hurt you," he said, voice breaking. "I thought I was owed something, that after Dad died, I deserved what he built. But I see now, he left it to you because you earned it, because you kept it." Adeline's eyes glistened. "You didn't have to steal from me to have my love. You already had it." He nodded slowly. "I know that now. But I didn't come to ask forgiveness. I came to say, I'm leaving town. For good." "Where will you go?" she asked. "Doesn't matter. Maybe Nashville, maybe further. I just can't stay here anymore. Everyone looks at me, like I'm the son who tried to take his mother's soul." Adeline's voice softened. "And were they wrong?" He winced. "No." The room went still. Outside, the first hint of dawn was coloring the sky. Finally, Adeline walked to the window and looked out. "When your father planted that maple," she said, "you were just a boy. You helped him dig the hole, remember? You complained about the roots." Randall gave a sad smile. He said the roots were supposed to fight. That's how they held on. She turned to him. "That tree grew because it fought the dirt around it. Maybe that's what you need to do too. Find new ground." He stood slowly. "I will." Then he reached into his coat pocket and placed something on the coffee table. The old family photo he'd taken from her dresser months ago. "This belongs here," he said. Adeline stared at it for a long time. Then she reached out and touched the edge of the frame. "You were a sweet child," she whispered. "And I still believe that boy is in there somewhere." "I don't," he said quietly. She met his eyes. "Then go find him again." Randall nodded. His lips parted like he wanted to say more, but no words came. He walked to the door, paused, and looked back one last time. "Thank you for opening the door," he said. "I didn't do it for you," Adeline replied gently. "I did it for me, so I'd never wonder if I should have." And just like that, he was gone. When the sun finally rose, Adeline sat on the porch, watching the light break through the branches of the maple tree. "You think he'll come back someday?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not to this house, but maybe to himself." The wind rustled the leaves, and one golden leaf drifted down, landing in her lap. She held it for a moment, then let it go. It twirled away, carried by the morning breeze. Sometimes, she said softly, letting go is the only way to hold on. I sat beside her in silence, knowing the storm had passed, not cleanly, but honestly. And for the first time since I met her, the sunrise didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a beginning. The morning after Randall left, the house felt lighter. The air moved differently, as if it had been waiting years for permission to breathe again. I found Adeline in the garden, kneeling on a small cushion, her gloved hands in the soil. She was humming, quietly, peacefully, the same melody she'd hummed the night Earl planted the maple, she later told me. The sky above us was soft blue, and the first light slid across the leaves like forgiveness made visible. When she saw me standing there, she smiled. "Maggie, honey, I'm replanting the lilies. They've been too crowded for years. Thought I'd give them space to grow." "After everything you've been through," I said, crouching beside her, "I'd say you deserve some space too." She chuckled. "That's the truth." We worked side by side for an hour, the dirt cool beneath our fingers. I noticed how steady her hands had become. No tremor, no hesitation. "You look peaceful," I said. "I am," she answered. It took losing what I thought I needed to realize I had everything I wanted right here. My home, my faith, and the strength to say no when it mattered. She wiped her brow and sat back on her heels. "You know, for years, I kept waiting for Randall to become the man I raised. But waiting turned into losing myself. Now I think love isn't about waiting for someone to change. It's about refusing to disappear while they don't." I let those words sink in. They sounded like something she'd been carrying for a long time, something ready to be spoken only now that her voice belonged fully to her again. A few days later, a letter arrived. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Randall's. Adeline hesitated before opening it. When she finally unfolded the paper, a small photo slipped out. A new one, taken at what looked like a mechanic shop. Randall stood next to an old pickup, grease on his shirt, a faint smile on his face. The letter was short. "Ma, I got a job. Small place outside Chattanooga. I'm staying out of trouble. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I'm trying. Love." Adeline read it twice, then placed it on the table beside her tea. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. "He's working," she said simply. "Maybe the good part of him isn't gone after all." "He's learning what roots feel like," I said. She nodded. "And maybe one day he'll earn his wings again." As the weeks went by, the rhythm of our days settled into something easy. I'd come in the mornings, make breakfast, help her with the garden or the laundry, and we'd talk. Sometimes about Earl, sometimes about the past, sometimes about nothing at all. The maple tree out front turned gold and red, its leaves tumbling down like slow confetti. One afternoon, we sat on the porch drinking lemonade. The air smelled of earth and rain. "You know," Adeline said, "I used to be ashamed that everyone in town knew my business. But now I'm glad they did. Maybe someone else will see what happened here and remember that even old women have a right to fight back, kindly but firmly." "You didn't just fight back," I told her. "You showed everyone what dignity looks like." She smiled, that soft, knowing smile of hers. "You make me sound stronger than I am." "You are stronger than you think," I said. "You just forgot for a while." She looked out at the road, her gaze calm and steady. "Sometimes strength doesn't roar, Maggie. Sometimes it's just the quiet act of staying, in your home, in your truth, in your peace." I thought about all the nights she'd sat awake, listening to keys in the door, about the fear she'd swallowed, the love she'd almost let destroy her. And she was right. Strength wasn't the absence of fear. It was what she did with it. That Sunday, we went back to church. The whispers were still there. People will always whisper. But this time, Adeline walked taller. After the service, Ruth Miller hugged her tight and said, "You look lighter, honey, like the Lord finally gave you your rest." Adeline smiled. "Maybe he just gave me my boundaries." Everyone laughed, and for the first time, the sound didn't sting. It healed. That night, I stayed for supper. We ate chicken and mashed potatoes, the kind of meal that brings a home back to life. Afterward, Adeline poured us each a cup of coffee. The air was warm, the lights low, the world outside still. She took a slow sip and said, "You know, Maggie, I spent most of my life taking care of everyone else. Earl, the kids, the church. I thought that was love, giving until I disappeared. But now I see it clearer. Love is also protecting what's yours, even if it means standing alone for a while." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You're not alone anymore." She smiled. "I know. God sent me a friend who knew how to listen." Later, as I got ready to leave, Adeline followed me to the porch. The night sky was full of stars, bright against the quiet of Willow Creek. The maple's branches swayed gently, scattering a few last leaves across the steps. "I used to hate that tree," she said again, laughing softly. "Always dropping something, always needing to be swept. But now I think it's teaching me something. How to let go and still stay rooted." I hugged her tight. "You did more than stay rooted, Adeline. You bloomed again." When I drove away, I looked in the mirror and saw her standing there, waving from the porch, small but strong, the light behind her framing her like a promise kept. And if you're hearing this story, sweetheart, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because somewhere out there, there's another woman like Adeline, tired, scared, but ready to stand her ground. And I hope she knows this. It's never too late to take back your peace, to lock your door, and still keep your heart open.